Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Rushcliffe series. This is the southernmost district in Nottinghamshire and it contains 59 civil parishes of England. And there's some corkers down here. Let's dive in and check one out. Welcome back to Rushcliffe, everybody. Now, this morning I've brought you to a place which is right on the eastern edge of Rushcliffe Borough. So we're starting a new area of the district, if you like. And I've actually been looking forward to this one. The reason for it is simply because you can see this street here. This is Beverley's Avenue. This is where I've parked the car in this one. This is literally almost right on the boundary between this one and the one to the north, which means it can stay there to do 2 episodes. Saves fuel. Welcome to the parish of Whatton in the Vale. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Whatton in the Vale, wheat farm in the valley. Hello Rushcliffe, here we go again. This time we're in a brand new part of the district. So far everything down here has been out to the west, but this time we're in the eastern reaches of the borough, right on the Leicestershire border. This is Whatton in the Vale, a surprisingly large village given its apparent size on the map. Whatton, which means wheat farm, lies in the Vale of Belvoir between the River Whipling to the east and the River Smite to the west. Whatton can be split into 2 distinct areas. First of all, in the western throes of the village, there's an expanse of modern 20th century property that gives the place a border with Aslockton. In the east is where you'll find the much older original village, centred around a 14th century church with a tall spire that reaches up into the Nottinghamshire skies. Separating the two is a massive playing field where cricket, the most popular sport in this part of the county, has been played since 1897. Whatton has several other notable bits like an old tower mill, a pretty village green, and even a field full of llamas. It's also a village heavily associated with the Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. Even though he was born in Aslockton, it's here where he lies in the churchyard. Let's get walking and go see it all. Before we start our main walk, we have to talk a bit about the Player family, and that's a name you might recognise if you're a smoker. The family became famous for Player cigarettes, who for many years were one of Nottingham's major employers. Around 11,000 people worked for them in the late 1950s. Their history goes back to 1877 when John Player bought a small but successful tobacco company in West Lothian, Scotland, before moving it to Nottingham. He built 3 factories but rented out 2 of them to lace manufacturers until his business expanded. The company introduced pre-rolled cigarettes as well as selling loose-leaf Virginia tobacco and papers. This proved very successful. By the 1930s, 2/3 of all cigarettes bought in Britain came from the Player factories, with the runaway favourite being Navy Cut. Production peaked in the 1950s, but health scares, taxes and a ban on advertising began to affect the industry. Player closed the doors of their last factory in 2016 and production in Nottingham ceased after almost 140 years. The Players lived at Whatton Manor, which they bought in 1919 after it had been through the hands of many other families such as the Newmarches and the Dickinsons. The house was demolished in 1964, but its associated stable block still stands. Today it's been turned into a very successful stud farm, which has produced quite a few winning racehorses and thoroughbreds. Their most famous resident was Overdose, who was nicknamed the Budapest Bullet. He was renowned for his sprint finish. As a yearling in 2005, he was purchased for 2,000 guineas, but he went on to win hundreds of thousands of pounds for his new owners. He died in 2015. We start on Dart Lane in an area of modern 20th century housing. This is not typical of Whatton in the Vale, as we'll see. As the village has expanded, this estate has practically now conjoined Whatton to neighbouring Aslockton. Beverley's Avenue is named for the church, which carries a dedication to St John of Beverley. With a mixture of detached and semi-detached housing and quite a few bungalows thrown into the mix, this area feels more like a suburb. It makes sense though. Whatton's location near the A52 attracts commuters, and this sort of housing is perfect for them. At the end of Cottage Avenue we find a parish notice board. This now proudly displays a TVI card, so we can officially tick Whatton in the Vale off the Rushcliffe list. You can reach Whatton by bus. Here's a stop on Dart Lane where the number 833 provides a service to the town of Bingham. Across the road from that stop is an enormous playing field. Whatton and Aslockton share this facility. The cricket ground upon this is named in memory of Richard Lambourne. Cricket is a big deal in this area. It was first played in Whatton in 1897 and even features on the village sign. At the end of Dart Lane we hit Grantham Road, where this information board shows us a handy map of the village. Directly opposite this is a footbridge which crosses a river. This is the River Smite, which flows for 20 miles through Leicestershire and southeastern Nottinghamshire, joining the Devon near Shelton. In the 17th century the river was instead known as the Snite, which meant foul or miry. This implies back then it was dirty, but now it's rather pleasant. The path we're on is actually the old road from Whatton to Grantham, although at this point it's a little hard to believe. Well, let me tell you folks, if this was the old Grantham Road, it was very, very narrow. You haven't really got much in the way of space on either side of you really as you walk down here. It must have been either grassed on that side, or it was genuinely this narrow in a bygone time, but I find that very hard to believe, to be honest. Now the reason I've stopped here is I wanted to draw your attention to this hedgerow, because behind that hedgerow there is an old windmill. It's quite a distance away and it's very awkwardly sited. You can sort of get closer to it, but it's not really helpful to the route, because it's kind of sited in an area that's full of cul-de-sacs and it's not very conducive to a circular route. But it is there is a windmill there. If I can find a picture of it, a better one than actually going to it and trying to record it myself, I'll put it in the video right now. You can just about see the top of the mill here. It was built in 1820, had 4 sails, and the capless tower is now a listed building. Now well over the Smite, we're entering the much older and more characterful part of Whatton. Something I found rather odd about this area was just how many of these old buildings are not listed. Whatton only has 7. One of course is the mill, but 2 of the other 6 are located well away from the village itself in the surrounding farmland. The remaining 4 are the church, its boundary wall, a group of headstones, and 1 solitary cottage. Now experience tells us that Whatton would have grown initially around the church and this pretty village green. I certainly wouldn't mind waking up to this every morning, that's for sure. We're on Ivy Row, by the way, a fabulous little terrace that lines the back of the green. At the end of this road, if you look right, you'll notice a cluster of new builds with the name of Griffin's End. They were built on the site of Whatton's former pub, the Griffin's Head, which was closed and demolished in the mid-1990s. Whatton now has no pub, and the nearest watering hole is the Cranmer Arms in Aslockton. On the edge of the green is a stone under a British flag. I suspect this is a war memorial, but there was no obvious clue. If you're after the war memorials in this place, there are 2 in the church. Here's a handy sign that points you in the direction of both it and the parish hall along Church Street. On the next corner is a phone box, and this one's a book exchange now. Property-wise, things are about to go up a notch or two as some of the best can be found in this part of Whatton. Here's a good example opposite that phone box, but it's the building next door that's of interest next. This is the Jubilee Hall. It was built in 1936 in celebration of the Silver Jubilee of George V, and it was donated to the parish by William Goodacre Player. It's managed and maintained by a committee who saved the hall from possible closure in the year 2000. Since then, extensive improvements have been made to what is an excellent parish facility. Around the corner now, we pass a large white house complemented by some pretty pink blossom on the nearby trees. Even though Whatton is kept looking nice by its parish council, it surely can't take a great deal of effort in the springtime. In fact, you can't help just sitting back and admiring this part of the village. These narrow lanes make you feel as if you've been transported into a bygone time. I love the name of this road, Sunbeam Street, which even had a house called Sunshine Cottage. Despite its size now, Whatton has no school. It used to, though. Here we see the old Church of England School, a tiny building which has no definitive erection date, but was known to have been built before 1853. Prior to that year, Whatton's school was in the church. The next section is all housing, so here's a montage. We emerge on Chapel Walk, and here's the old chapel which gives the street its name. Whatton has had two chapels in its time. Both were Wesleyan. The first was built in 1825, and then a second, larger chapel replaced it in 1846. This is that building. Between here and the next landmark, it's more of the same housing-wise. Narrow lanes and quaint little cottages, all with an aura typical of a rural Nottinghamshire village. Before long, these all give way to the largest and most historic feature anywhere in Whatton. This spire can be seen for several miles across the Vale of Belvoir. So as far as the biggest feature in this part of Whatton in the Vale goes, there's really no contest, is there? The tall spire of the church dominates this area. And so we're going to go in through the gate and have a look at this magnificent building and see exactly what its history is all about. Dedicated to St John of Beverley, Whatton's church is a Grade II listed building dating from the 14th century, but it was extensively restored and rebuilt in the 19th. It belongs to the Cranmer group of parishes, together with the churches at Aslockton, Hawksworth, Austin, Scarrington and Thoroton. A service is held in Whatton once a month. Among its features is a chapel dedicated to the memory of Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, who was born and raised in neighbouring Aslockton, but this is considered to be his home church. Now, if you like the sound of church bells, I timed my visit to this very right. The tower has 8 bells, 5 of which were cast by Henry Oldfield of Nottingham between 1590 and 1618. This final part of the walk was simply amazing. A footpath up the side of the churchyard crosses over the Smite again, before giving you a series of wonderful views across the playing field back towards the newer part of the village. And this path, by the way, is fully paved. It's not a grass track or caked in mud. It's very well maintained. It's not straight, it bends and twists its way around some fields, and it's popular with dog walkers. In the second last field before its conclusion, there was one final surprise, a field of llamas. I'm led to believe these are friendly creatures, but I didn't risk trying to say hello. Now, because I'm right on the boundary here with the next one to the north, there's no drive out in this episode, but what I can do is give you a taste of what's to come. These barriers are down at the railway station, and as you can see, there's a train just pulling in. So we'll watch this to finish. The railway you can see here is the Nottingham to Skegness line, and this will make several appearances on the channel over the next few weeks. The station is Aslockton, and that's our start point for next week's episode. I'll see you back here in 7 days' time. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.